Welcome to Goshen Prepping. Thanks for joining us. When it comes to stockpiling and getting food ready for emergencies, natural disasters, crap hitting the fan, we want to be able to think and prep smartly rather than simply just prep tons of stuff. For example, we put a video out a few days ago about stockpiling rice and beans. It's a great thing to prep, but it doesn't give you all the essential fats you need. There's more to it than that, though. And I really want to show you that you need to put more thought into it for the fact that, think about this. Rice and beans, no matter how good it is going to require a lot of heat, a lot of British thermal units putting into it to get it so it's prepared. I mean, you can still soak it ahead of time and such, I get that. But nevertheless, you have to have a heat source. And if we're talking about a complete collapse or a serious problem where, well, you know what, your propane disappeared and your electricity on your electric stove disappeared, whatever, how are you going to prepare it? It's a difficult situation. Not to mention, let's say we have a complete power grid failure, it's gone, and you're now basically sheltering in place in your apartment in a city. What are you going to cook with? Cooking is something that you seriously need to consider because, number one, you don't want the smell going over to your neighbors so they'll come banging on your door. But secondly, heat source is very difficult. So one thing you might want to consider in this very unique situation is pre-canned food. Now, I want to talk about pre-canned food for a second. I mean, pre-canned, in other words, you buy from the grocery store canned. You can obviously can your own food as well using jars and such, which works amazingly well. Something you could really invest into if you want to talk about home preservation. That's the way I would go, by the way. It works very well. But furthermore, when we talk about canning and pre-canned food, obviously having a metal can from the store is a great way to obviously stockpile. And you know what, in this case, it's Marie Callender's Angus beef chili. So in this can, I'm going to be the first to tell you, it's probably not the best as far as ingredients go. You know, it's got a lot of stuff in here. This whole can has 43 grams of carbs, which is quite a bit. But it has 32 grams of fat, which is great, and 25 grams of protein. So, you know, if you need some extra energy with extra carbs, that's not bad considering what you have here. But here's what's neat about this. When it comes to these pre-canned food, or, you know, obviously just canned food, they're actually prepared sterile. What causes food to rot? Bacteria, sometimes fungus, etc. If they canned this, and the first experimentation in canning, by the way, they did this, they didn't get it hot enough, and bacteria was still alive inside the can. And when they sealed it, they waited a few months and they opened it, and whoa, it was like awful, awful nastiness. But not anymore. This can is 100% sterile. There's no bacteria in there, so therefore it's not going to rot and spoil. That's how it works. It's pretty amazing. Now, you do have to worry about things with canned food, and this is just briefly talk about this. We see this is like a pull-top can, and although I prefer not to have a pull-top can, you can still stockpile with them just fine. But I want you to understand all canned food, by the way, you need to look at the seals on the bottom, seals at the top, the seal running down the side, and make sure there isn't any type of bulging. If you open it and it sprays food everywhere, that's bad. If there's kind of like black furry growing things in there, it's bad. So a pull top, all it does is makes a little bit more increased chance it may rupture. So when you do this, make sure the can is put into a situation where it's not going to get too hot, too cold, everything's stacked up. Don't drop it or lay on its side, those kind of things. Like the other day, we dropped a can, got a big dent in it. I was like, all right, guys, this is going right on our pantry shelf. We have to use it first. Okay, so with that, I want to talk about, in these scenarios, having food like this can of chili. This baby is a meal all of its own, which is really nice because you could even pop the top and use some kind of like little sterno or some kind of little alcohol burner, barely any fuel at all, and warm it up right inside the can. It's a beautiful thing. So having a lot of pre-made canned foods, or pre-made foods, I should say, in these works really well. A lot of people spend a lot of money on getting like MREs, for example. MREs are awesome. I mean, I don't eat half the stuff in them anymore. Back in the military, I loved the things, but that was back when I was younger and I liked processed garbage. Obviously, this Angus beef probably has some processed stuff in here. Chili based. Oh, no, surprisingly, it doesn't have a whole lot. Angus beef, pinto beans, salt, sugar, flavoring, garlic powder, and sodium phosphate. So overall, that's not bad for canned food. Something you want to watch for is a lot of preservatives obviously can really make it problematic. There's a lot of high sodium in here, and people talk about they think sodium is bad for you, which it's not. Sodium is actually good. You have to have electrolytes in there. It gives it a lot of flavor, and as humans, we like salt. There's a reason for that. So think about cans like this. Instead of paying for what MREs are like, over $5 each now, this can was probably like $1-ish. So you could have a can of chili. You could have, of course, a can of corned beef hash. Honestly, I love corned beef hash, but unless you This is just me and my personal taste. I love like the little crumbles when you make corned beef hash where it's like crispy. That's delicious. And egg on it is delicious too. But that still is another meal. This has lots of fats in it. 40 grams of fat, beautiful. 39 grams of carbs and 29 grams of protein. So this guy actually has more protein and fat than the chili does. Interesting, but it has more carbs too. So there's another option. You could do like corned beef hash. You could do Amy's organic chili. This one's the spicy version. I like Amy's organic chili, but I find that, compared in chili wise, this chili tastes a little bit better. But Amy's being more natural ingredients, I feel like the flavor is not quite there, but of course you always spice it up with your own spices. It has 15 grams of fat, which is not too bad. 26 grams of protein, pretty good. But 63 grams of carbs. But again, if you're talking about crap, it's the fan, you want the extra carbs sometimes to get the work and everything done. Now, soups are always a good option too. Here is Campbell's Well Yes. I like the name of that. And when I see Campbell's, by the way, I'm not going to just dog on Campbell's, but there's so many different soup companies out there that fill it with so many chemicals. It's unbelievable. And that's why you really need to look at that, the ingredients. The Well Yes can is actually pretty good. Look at that. Well, first off, it has 3 grams of fat, almost negligible, 13 grams of protein, not bad, and 36 grams of carbs. On this, listen to this: water, tomato puree, carrots, lentils, celery, tomatoes, spinach, onions, salt, of course it is, it's soup, olive oil, yeast extract, sugar, xanthan gum, Chinese cabbage extract, potato flour, garlic, natural flavorings, onion, spice, locust bean gum, carrots. So that's what Campbell's did, was they took their normal monstrosity soups that a lot of people eat and said, well, you know what? Now we can actually have something that's good. Well, yes. And this one specifically is a vegetarian soup. I'm not endorsing getting a Campbell's Well Yes soup or Great Value corned beef hash. I'm not endorsing any of these things. The point of this video is this: you really need to look at having foods, especially if you're in an apartment, especially if you may not have a heat source, especially if you're in a situation you don't want your neighbors smelling a lot of things. And honestly, even put this in a backpack real quick can work really well for 1 or 2 meals. Obviously, you don't want to carry around a lot of canned food with you, but it's something you need to consider. There's actually, obviously, lots of options when it comes to different types of foods that you can get that are all pre-made and pre-canned. Now, again, we talk about having rice and beans and meat. We talk about corn and peas. We talk about veggies and fruit. And all of those are great options, especially when it comes to cans. But the problem is they all require preparation. They all require you to put it together to make your meal. If you need something that's going to be a little easier and quicker, you live alone in an apartment, you don't have time to make a lot of the meals. And in addition, if the power goes out, you're going to have a fridge or freezer. So if you make a meal, you have like leftovers, they don't usually fend very well without some type of fridge or freezer. These one-serve cans of pre-made food may be something you're looking for, and put into consideration of something that you may want to actually have extra stockpiling in. Because again, there's a lot of different options. Relatively speaking, they're not bad for you per se. Some have preservatives, watch for that. And they're actually inexpensive. So you could really stuff cabinets and closets under your bed with all kinds of different cans like these and make it so you can actually have pre-made meals right from the can, which is honestly, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful things about having canned food. But you know what? I want to know what you think about that. Put in the comments below. What kind of pre-made meals do you buy in the can that's already ready to go? And of course, I don't want you to reveal your stockpiles, but is that something you stockpile? And if you live in an apartment and you may not have to bug out, you may be bugging in the situation, that's something you seriously may want to consider. Thanks for watching.